This is David Sweetman. I'm Senior Director of ERP, Product Marketing at SAP. I'm honored to be here with Mickey North Rizza, who's the Vice President of Applications at IDC. But some of the core things that people have always been able to rely on is whatever their core competence is, their relationship with their customers, and their ability to define innovations that get them close to their customers, manage their operations more effectively, and enable them to differentiate. And I know that's close to your heart, and you've been looking at how technology can help companies really form a consistent and sustainable differentiation for their organization using digital transformation as kind of the engine. And I wondered if you could speak to us about that, maybe point to some research that you found as well.
Sure, David. Hi, thanks again for inviting me today. It's great to be here. And I did prepare a few slides based on our quick introduction on the front end when you and I quickly sent some emails back and forth. And so I'm happy to share some slides around that if you'd like me to. I look forward to the discussion, and thanks for the time today. So I'll let you get started and ask your first question, and I'll bring up my slides. How's that?
Great, thank you. Yes, so, you know, as you know, organizations have been constantly changing, and I wonder if you could give us a view to what makes those that do better in these times of difficulty better than others in terms of their ability to build resilience.
Sure, happy to help out here. So one of the things we did is during the pandemic, we did research every 2 weeks at IDC, and it basically started in the March timeframe of 2020. The last 2 months of the year, we moved that to a monthly timeframe, and now we're doing what we're calling the digital resiliency in the future enterprise as it goes forward. But as this pandemic started off, I think there's an important point here. We kind of looked at it in this this breakout in this curve area. We saw organizations quickly in March looking around business continuity and trying to get to the next step. And then they're looking at their cost optimization. How much cash do we have? What are we spending our money on? Trying to understand how are they going to make their investments going forward, right? And it came down to business resiliency. And what we found were two things during the first part of this study. Those that what we called at that point in time digitally determined really tried to flatten out that curve and make sure that they were more resilient faster. They actually got to the next step, and they've been able to move towards this new normal much faster, right? But then there were all these others that we call digitally distraught, and they tended to go down the curve. They weren't ready. They didn't have the right aspects in place. So as we've moved forward here, we've also looked at it in what we call our digital resiliency index, and we started looking at those organizations that have digitally adapted. So those were the distraught, those that have had to go forward and putting projects in place. They had to understand what was really important to keep their organization going. And once they got to that point, they could start accelerating, but it's still a small population. Right now, we're seeing the investments in organizations looking at it from a technology standpoint around digital adoption versus digital acceleration. And we really believe these next 2 years are going to be really important for organizations as they start to bring more technology tools into the equation. They understand how these apps come together, what that means to their network, how they become more innovative, and how they get to that next step.
I really like the way you've drawn a spotlight on organizations really starting from different places. You know, some that already have a strategy in place, some that are really being forced into a strategy. So thank you for sharing that. I wonder if you could share, you know, some of the things that are really impacting that digital transformation experience for companies. You know, what's helping and what's hindering for certain organizations in their journey.
Sure, absolutely. So one of the things we're seeing is those organizations that have been on the short-term adaptation or that were originally digitally distraught, right? They've had to figure out how do they get their organization to work from home, right? We've heard about all these organizations that have had to update laptops and do different things, right? How do they connect their people? Do they have a collaboration platform? Do they have some of the technology like we're using now, you know, with the Zooms or whatever the case is, and bringing those together? What do those remote operations look like? How do these contactless experiences come together? And they're looking for data-driven insights, right? The problem is this is all great because it's kept the world going. It's allowed the employees to keep working. It's allowed the businesses to keep going. But it's been much more tactical, right? It hasn't allowed the organization to think about that longer term design impact. think about strategy. They've had to fill in tactical gaps with different aspects. And it's been great, right? Because they've kept themselves going. Unfortunately, it hasn't enabled them to get to that next step and think about an intelligent and autonomous operation as they move through this process, becoming more empathetic and getting insights at scale, right? And not just working from home, but working from anywhere, right? So as you get into that, you start thinking about, from a strategic standpoint, what do my integrations look like, right? How do I bring all these different applications and whatnot together? What about the networks that you work with, from a customer aspect to all the suppliers? In the supply chain, when I try to get, tie together the suppliers with the logistics, right? And how that all comes together. And then finally, those integration aspects of, do I need, a particular point solution, or can I get by with a suite that's going to bring me everything as I need it? So that's really some of the considerations we've seen going forward here, David.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I like the way you've really highlighted that we've had to adapt very quickly. And some organizations have also been able to incorporate some big strategic changes on the way as well. In many ways, this urgent change has been a forcing point for change. And I think this culture of innovation that companies always strive for is kind of coming to the fore. How do companies bring in that culture of innovation, kind of realize the infrastructure that they currently have, and then move forward to where they want to be in terms of relationships and technology. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about that kind of culture of innovation, how important it is, and then how companies are wrestling with the challenge of integrating the systems that are needed in order to fulfill that need.
Absolutely. So one of the things we're seeing is everything being tied around a digital aspect, right? So it's bringing together the digital side of the world. So putting an intelligent core in the center, right? Having your data, your internal processes, your external processes, all the data elements as they come together, and starting to build this ecosystem that allows you to orchestrate and get to the right step, right? One of the things we've seen around this digital platform aspect are those organizations are tending to think about API strategies, right? So how do they connect the data across the different aspects? Is it just my finance system talking to my procurement system, or do I bring in supply chain and manufacturing into that? And then what are the risk implications of doing something, right? Even if it extends out into the supply chain, how do those connectors come together and start to bring that data set together? It's also around using microservices and containers and looking at the right app structures. It's understanding that the customer experience is front and center, right? I think, David, we've been talking a little bit about the COVID-19 pandemic and how it really became a tipping point, I think is what you've really said here. And we totally agree. For organizations to become more digital. But as they get into this, when we think about that digital experience, it really does come back to something. We've talked for years about how businesses need to shift over and get to that consumer-like experience. Well, it's shifted there. That COVID-19 pandemic really put an effort on that, right? And it's building around all those data sets, those business processes that you need anywhere, anytime access, and the fluidity and adaptability and the acceleration of this to an organization, right? So that they can take that data and they can tie AI and machine learning to it, right? They can start looking at different aspects of those data aspects, become much more intelligent in the organization, and take that data, those data sets, using all this innovation and getting it to the next step. In fact, one of the things that we're actually finding here is a lot of organizations really want applications that are part of an integrated software suite. So if I step back and I look at that, and 81% of the organizations are saying that, I start to say to myself, whoa, I really need to look at this from an entire contextual level, strategic standpoint. I just can't be going out and buying all these solutions and trying to build them out. I need to think about a long-term strategy here with my entire applications, no matter who they are and what they are.
Yep, certainly that echoes some of the feedback we're hearing from customers. It's artificial intelligence is real. It enables us to unlock insights that we were not able to see as quickly before. But it's also putting an emphasis on the integrity of data, particularly when it crosses systems that may have different life cycles, different data structures, different paths. And it's striking that right balance between, bringing together solutions that provide value quickly, and also having data integrity that unlocks intelligence. Mm-hmm. So do you have any thoughts or comments, particularly around the importance of kind of data integrity in the unlocking of the intelligence?
Yep. So one of the things that we see from a resilience standpoint, and this is from our future of and COVID-19 impact study, and these are putting a couple things together here, is we see organizations from 2021 into 2022 really trying to enhance their products and services. Now, when you think about that from a digital standpoint, that has data all the way behind it. Anything you do has a data set tied to it, right? So then what does that mean about future-proofing your business? How do these data sets, the integrity of the data, the security of the data, all come together? What does that look like in a business process workflow? It might be something completely different for a consumer-like experience when we tap on our phone, but it could be also very similar from a business standpoint as we start to bring all this together, right? So what we're seeing is organizations are investing in this technology, but they're doing it to make sure that no matter what they do from a change management perspective, from an old operating model into a new digital model, that the data integrity, the data security, the scalability of it, and bringing it all together all starts to round itself out and get itself into that next level.
I like that you're highlighting here both the importance of the integrity, of course, but also the unlocking of new business models. And you know, it seems like that's been a barrier also that's been broken down by digital technologies and digital transformation, that industry silos are kind of breaking down, and industries are kind of adopting new business models that were very prevalent in other industries. For instance, service-based billing or other forms of getting closer to a customer and retaining a customer relationship. You know, in looking at both that business perspective and the technology perspective, what other findings have you found, and what insights can you give to companies that are embarking on this journey?
So I think there's a couple things here. The first is think about digital resiliency, right? It's about adaptation, it's about acceleration, right? You need to think about what type of systems do you have? Are they legacy on-premises systems that cannot be scaled, that have so many customizations that they haven't gotten to a point where they're standardized yet? Is there a hybrid approach that you could take as you go down this path, because you recognize that you might have 10, 20, 30 different types of 30,000 different types of customizations, and you kind of have to aggregate those, figure out what you're using, what you're not using, how things have evolved over the years, right? Because there's a lot of technical debt there, right? So as you start to think about that, then it's like, okay, I've plugged some holes, I've done the adaptation, but now I need to accelerate. And to do that, you may have to go to new systems. We're seeing these organizations go to modern and modular systems, right? They're using APIs and microservices and containers. They're in the cloud, right? They're all about getting access anywhere, anytime. They're scalable quickly. They really bring about a new change in the way they utilize and consume the data to bring more intelligent insights into an organization. So instead of having to, let's call it, dig in and pull a bunch of spreadsheets together and pull all this data together, do a quick aggregation and figure out what it's telling you, you may have this all done for you and brought to you so that you can start to leverage the technology to do the work for you. And as it's doing the work, it may come back and say, you know, you've been going down this path, but maybe you need to do this better, because suddenly the light bulb goes on and you see these data sets come together. You see actions that can be taken to make your performance for your business and your organization much better, right? So it's all about using that innovation and helping you get to that next step, and understanding that it isn't about staying stuck in the past. It's using the learnings of the past to help you go forward, understanding and laying out a strategic roadmap and an aspect for you to get to that overall next level.
I like what you said there about a company having to be really a constantly learning organization, and really these new data structures and kind of business process intelligence, if you like, is enabling us to see what's working and what's not, and us being able to adapt more quickly than ever before, and perhaps experiment and then institutionalize and then experiment again in a true kind of constant innovation pattern. But very helpful insights. Any further insights that you might have in terms of kind of things that companies can take as actionable insights, or in implementing the modular systems approach, or but maintaining this integrity of the data to unlock intelligence as companies move towards this intelligence enterprise?
Yeah, absolutely, David. So think about that digital core. And the last area is, I think, shift to modern, modular, and platform-based organization, right? Think about going from that legacy monolithic application to something that's much more modular, allows you to bring everything together in a platform that can come together with your entire ecosystem, right? So if I think of a technology and I go to buy that ERP system, I want to be able to work with all the other different applications I may have, right? So I need to understand where those integration points are, how the data security and the data integrity is, and how quickly it can scale, and how do I bring these pieces together, and how do I standardize across areas, right? And having a modular application to do that for me, where it's really tied into specifics of those areas that I need to use versus just having everything there and not using half of it, really makes a difference there. The other thing is getting to that platform, right? One of the things we've seen from the pandemic, we haven't spent any time on it here, is the fact that organizations are now investing in software to make, I'll call them digital innovation aspects, that either it might be a quick non-contact type application that you might use. You've seen them come out with the COVID pandemic, to anything that might be digital payments or something from a cash management standpoint, right? And you've seen those close a gap within, let's call it the overall business. We've also seen them extend a gap, and we call those task gaps, right? So we're seeing some of that come together, but really what it comes down to is when those gaps have to get closed, many of the organizations are going to go to your technology provider, so in this case it's SAP, right, to their ecosystem to say, how do I do this if I'm not getting it done within SAP? And every application provider has that. It isn't just one, it's everybody. So think about how all this fits together, what happens when you get a gap, how you close those gaps, how your technology provider can close it either with the latest update or with something else that you're doing. So it's not just one size fits all, it's what you need is what you're going to go out and get. And it's being innovative and knowing that your future is changing. It's becoming digital. It isn't just about adapting anymore. It's about accelerating and getting to that new normal in our new world.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, I guess that reinforces the importance, as you point out on your slide, really, of selecting, partners that have kind of platform-based architectures, business technology platform that enables that integrity and security and connectivity to be unlocked, and then perhaps to be institutionalized and be available to other companies, to the vendor themselves.
Thanks, David. I've enjoyed the time today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. You've been great to be with, and really appreciate all of your insights. Thank you very much indeed.